Good morning. Can you feel something different in the building right now? There are owls in this church today. They're not in the room, they're downstairs, but maybe you can feel them. My name is Kirsten Hunter. I'm the director of Lifespan Ministry here at South Church, serving in co-leadership with our Reverend Ellen Quadgrass and serving in co-ministry with all of you. Welcome. Welcome to those of you joining us online, those of you here in person, to newcomers just getting to know our community, and to beloveds who have been sitting in the same pews for decades, and everyone in between. Welcome. We are so happy you're here. A special call out in case the folks at our fall retreat are watching us. We send you love. We hope you're soaking up the falling leaves and the crisp autumn air. As part of our welcoming words each Sunday, we acknowledge the land where we gather today and every Sunday as land stolen centuries ago from Indigenous people, including the Abenaki and the Pennacook, a people for whom justice and self-determination has long been withheld. And today, on this Indigenous Peoples Weekend, it feels especially important to recognize that. Our worship today will speak to some of what that broken relationship calls us to consider. Every small choice we make is a ripple in our journey to repair, both with those people and with our planet. The gift of music this morning is offered by our Director of Music Ministry, Jonny Peiffer, and our beloved pianist and organist, Susan Adams. Today, she is lifting up the music of Chee. Mr. Chee is an award-winning pianist and composer who uses his gift and musical voice to explore and express his Dene heritage, which has at times been wrongly referenced as Navajo. Much of his music is inspired by traditional nonverbal chants incanted during ceremonies and gatherings. To find out more about Chee and his music, visit his website. The link is printed in your order of service. And speaking of that order of service, I encourage you to take a look for details about today's worship and also so much information about so many things that are happening in our community. Leading worship with me today is Worship Associate Willow Young and our Director of Children and Family Ministries, Jen Deo-Barry. Big thanks also to Jennifer Lydon and Ben Abbott, who are here supporting this service behind the scenes in the back of the room. Children today are invited to go downstairs to meet those owls. Adults are actually allowed to do that too, by the way. I won't be hurt. You can head down and see those owls as well. This service is recorded after all, and you can't record seeing owls. Well, I guess you can record it, but it's not the same. The nursery is open today, and of course, everyone of every age is invited to join us in the fellowship hall after service for coffee and treats and conversation. We have assisted listening devices available in the back of the room, as well as large print hymnals. Please ask an usher if you need assistance. Please take a moment and silence your cell phones if you have them. And now for just a few announcements.
Good morning. So yes, check out your orders of service for all kinds of things going on. I'll bring your attention to one especially, the one about New Hampshire Campaign for Voting Rights poll watchers being needed. See Susan Dewhurst about that. If you would like to.
I'm ready to, but if you're doing the
Sure.
that's fine too. Oh.
Speak into my mic.
Okay, I'll be very quick. Hi, I'm Susan Dewhurst, and if you want to make sure we have free and fair elections on this November, please let me know. We need election protection volunteers all across the state. You don't have to live in New Hampshire in order to do this. It's one day where you can make a real difference. I've done it a couple of different elections, and I can say it's honestly one of the most impactful things I've ever done in my life. And this November is more important than ever. There will be election challengers all across the country, including in New Hampshire, and we need people to come out, be there, be a voice of reason, help de-escalate, just calm things down. There's a whole crew of people that would be supporting you. It's a 1-hour training. You can either watch the Zoom or you can go to a live Zoom training and ask questions. I'll be downstairs after to answer any of your questions. I hope you'll join me.
Okay, and just a couple of more things to know. The wider network of care is looking for more help with Jillian's memorial for next Saturday. The email address for the pastoral associates is in the order of service toward the back at the top. So email the PAs if you're able to help with Jillian's memorial. And then finally, gold stars for the spiritual decathlon. If you have done anything for spiritual decathlon in the last couple of weeks, you can see Pam Lehman, who's holding up a gold star right now during social hour, and she will happily give you the sticker you have so hardly earned, so well earned. Thank you.
Well, good morning, South Church. My name is Joe McEachern, and yesterday was my 22nd wedding anniversary. Happy anniversary, hon. The reason I mention this is my wife and I were married right here at South Church 22 years ago yesterday. We weren't members at the time, but we shortly afterwards became members of South Church. And I have to say that in the many years since then, there's been many seasons of South Church for me personally. Some years where I am leaning into South Church, some years where I'm leaning out. But my roots continue to grow. And I can say that today I feel more at home stepping in these doors than I've ever felt. That is one of my main motivations for thinking about why we support South Church, helping the church thrive today and into the future. I want to share a quick story with you about some granite blocks. And some of you may remember a few years ago when the staircase was redeveloped at the back of the church, there were some granite blocks that were removed that were part of the foundation. And some of these blocks were auctioned off to raise some funds for South Church. My wife and I were lucky enough to acquire a few of them. And I thought it would be too much to bring one of them in to show you. So I did bring a visual so you kind of get an idea what I'm talking about. So these should look very familiar. They're impressive stones of deep connections to South Church. We placed a couple of these blocks over at the Seacoast Waldorf School in Elliott. It's a place that is near and dear to us. Very few people would know that. But I know when I drive by Route 236 and I can see them from the side of the road, and it's just a really heartwarming connection to know the deep history of South Church. I think about future generations of children. It really touches me deeply, knowing that connection. And there's another stone, it's actually the one in this picture, that is at our house in Kittery. And when I look out my kitchen window, I can see this stone. I sometimes will start looking at its rustic edges. It's got so much character. There's other times I'll see a squirrel perched up there having its breakfast right on the stone. And then a lot of the times I don't notice the stone at all. I'm too busy with the comings and goings of my life. But it's always amazing to sort of reconnect with what it represents to me, that this stone was once part of the foundation of South Church. It's a really strong feeling that I have that connects me to this place. I think about there's a lot of parallels between my family's financial commitment to South Church and these stones. To me, contributing to South Church, it's really part about being part of the foundation. It takes all of us. And if you take a look around at each other, we're the ones that are building this church. We're the ones that are part of this foundation. And it takes all kinds of stones, all kinds of sizes, all kinds of jobs, and we all kind of fit together. So I'm going to close with just inviting all of you to think about being part of this foundation of South Church. And together we can really build this amazing community which we have all experienced. And that's what I wanted to share with you today, so may it be so.
One other quick note this morning, if you're enjoying the flowers up in the chancel, they're from Sue Thornson's memorial service yesterday. So as we light our chalice this morning, let us invite the Spirit within to be open to what is not easily spoken aloud. Let listening exist from a deep, receptive, caring place. From here, may we understand a deeper meaning, explore the subtlety of intent, ask the question why. Moving attention away from self-oriented thinking, listening for the meaning in the spaces between words, before thought, in the deepest of silence. May we hear the Spirit speaking its whisper. I invite everyone to stand as they're willing and able and join us in the reading of our mission statement of South Church. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community. Thank you. So my name is Willow Young, and I have the privilege and honor to be serving as one of our worship associates in conjunction with and partnership with our ministerial team and each other. And one of the real blessings of doing so has always been to have time and intention to reflect on the theme for each month as we come together. And if you've looked in your order of service, you'll see this month's theme is on deep listening. So it's caused me to reflect a lot on where that exists within me and why I need to be called towards that. And usually it's most profound in moments of change. And that change can be really of any flavor, one that I'm either called to or one that's thrust upon us, right? And it's oftentimes we're not given much choice for the path that we're suddenly having to be put on. But it's how I handle that change. What am I looking for inside of it? Because there ends up being this running narrative. I'm sure many of you have heard the phrase, I'm sometimes of two voices on this, or two minds on this. I usually jest that I'm usually on 30 or 40. And it becomes a cacophony inside my own thinking about how am I going to affect my own life in this realm of change, whether it's making a significant choice about which way I want to take my professional life, or do I want to be pursuing a new venture. And invariably, there's two sort of tones that reach out the loudest. One being that, oh, just do it. Leap and the net will appear. And the other one goes, no, don't. There's no net there. and we can't be assured it will appear, because it doesn't always, right? Because sometimes we throw ourselves into the world with the best of intent, but we've not really heard all the voices. We've not taken the time to discern everything that comes to mind. The two voices that become 30 become thousands. And so, too often, it's easy to just sit in a state of nothing, right? Less action is the action of ease. It allows me to stay where I am, but I never get to grow or change. So instead, I invite us to think about what that examination of those voices looks like. And I usually ask myself, what is this voice trying to do in service to me? This one that calls me forth into new ways of being, and this one that is holding me back and keeping me in a place. Is it doing so out of fear? Is it doing so out of safety? Maybe the question to ask is, why are you helping me in this way? And how does that come together? Because in doing this, I get to start examining my feelings, examining the inherent conflict I have within myself, and hopefully find some form of discernment that leads me to action. I invite everyone to stand as you are willing and able and join us in our opening hymn, number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning.
Okay, I would love to invite all children and teens and even adults who would like to hear a story a little bit closer to come right up and sit on the floor. So, there is a remarkable human being named Joanna Macy, and she is 95 years old, She is a lifelong activist, and in the 1970s, she learned about Buddhism in northern India, and she's still a practicing Buddhist. But sometime in the 1990s, she went back to India and saw her teacher, and he told her of a prophecy. And there's a beautiful recording of Joanna Macy telling the story of this prophecy on the internet, and I encourage you to look it up and listen to it, maybe listen to it 100 times even. It's wonderful. And I have the script of her telling the story that I'll read to you now. But yeah, go back and listen again after. So this is the prophecy of the Shambhala warriors. There comes a time when all life on earth is in danger. At that time, great powers have arisen, barbarian powers as they are called. And although they waste their wealth in preparations to annihilate each other, they have much in common. And among the things they have in common are weapons of unfathomable destructive power and technologies that lay waste to the world. It is just at this point when the future of all beings hangs by the frailest of threads that the kingdom of Shambhala emerges. Now, you can't go there because it's not a place. It exists in the hearts and minds of the Shambhala warriors. And you can't tell whether someone is a Shambhala warrior just by looking at them, because they wear no uniform or insignia. They have no banners to show which side they're on, no barricades on which to climb to threaten the enemy, or behind which they can rest and regroup. The Shambhala warriors don't have any home turf. There is only the terrain of the barbarian powers for them to move on, regroup, and use. Now the time comes when great courage is required of the Shambhala warriors, moral courage and physical courage. That is because they're going right into the heart of the barbarians' power to dismantle their power and dismantle their weapons in every sense of the word. As they make their way into the pits and citadels where the armaments are made, so they are also entering the corridors of power where decisions are made. Now heed this, the Shambhala warriors know these weapons can be dismantled, and that is because they are manomaya, which is an old word that means mind made. Made by the human mind, they can be unmade by the human mind. The dangers facing us are not fashioned by some satanic deity or by an evil extraterrestrial force or by some immutable preordained fate. These dangers are created by our relationships, our habits, our choices. So now is the time, said Joanna's teacher, for the Shambhala warriors to go into training. How do they train? Joanna asked. They train in the use of 2 implements or tools. And what are they? She asked. And he held up his hands the way the lamas hold the ritual objects, the dorji and bell, in the great monastic dances of his people. One, he said, is compassion, and the other is insight into the radical interdependence of all phenomena. You need both, he said. You need compassion because it provides the fuel to move you out where you need to be in order to do what you need to do. It is so hot it can burn you out, this tool of compassion. So you need the other tool, the insight that reveals the interbeing of all that is. When that dawns in you, then you know that this is not a battle between good and bad people, but that the line between good and evil runs through the landscape of every human heart. And you know that we are so interwoven, and even our smallest acts have repercussions that ripple through the web of life beyond our capacity to discern. And that knowing is kind of cool, and it can seem at times a bit abstract. And that's why you need the heat of compassion. And that's the essence of the prophecy. If you have watched Tibetan monks or nuns chanting, you've probably seen their hands making gestures or mudras at the same time. And their hands may well be dancing the interplay between compassion and insight, which is there for each of us to embody and use in our own way. There's a lot in there, a lot to think about, and I hope that you will revisit this. But for right now, let's go quietly so we don't scare any owls downstairs, and we'll meet at the bottom of the stairs.
So at South Church, we do a lot to contribute with our time, our treasure, our talents. One of the simple ways that I often participated in service, even as a regular donor, and please do pledge for our upcoming campaign, but would be to look at each week that I sat in the pews as requiring me to purchase a ticket to participate. And I did that through the offering, and continue to do so when I can. So we invite you this morning to do so. But South Church does not just ask for collections for its service, its work, and the things that we do. We also share our plate each month. And during the month of October, our collections will be shared with the Dover Children's Home. The Dover's Children's Home provides tools and support for youth to heal from emotional trauma through community-based treatment programs that foster relationships and enable youth to create hope for the future. We now invite the ushers to come forward and take up this morning's offering. Thank you.
digging this music. I don't know if you're feeling it like me, but ooh, that organ. Thank you, Susan. And Sue Thorson, who we memorialized yesterday, would be so happy to know the organ is playing 2 days in a row. She loves that organ. I invite us now into a time of meditation or prayer or quiet reflection, whatever works for you. This morning I offer you this perhaps familiar poem by Rumi. It is titled The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. I think we often argue with our own feelings, and that's kind of funny. We resist them, we critique them, we judge them as reflections of ourselves we wish weren't true. Even joy, we can smother with thoughts that it is undeserved or that it's needed somewhere else more than here. This life we have been given, it comes with waves and waves of emotions and experiences. And maybe our only job is to learn how to let the waves come and to let them go. And, whenever possible, to dance in the foam. This church is here for your heart. If you are struggling, if you need support, if you want to tell somebody something really great that's happening in your life, please reach out to us. Reverend Ellen and I are here, our pastoral associates are here. So many people in this community want to know how you are. I'm going to give us some time to reflect, and if you wish, you are welcome to use that time to come forward and light a candle of joy or a candle of concern. 2 weeks ago, just after Hurricane Helene tore through multiple states, my 24-year-old son, who did give me permission to share this story, was home on a day off from work, and I happened to ask him if he'd seen footage of the flooding and devastation. I, at the time, was feeling horrified by what I was seeing in those first days, the oddness of that hurricane, the way it maintained its intensity so far inland, the amount of water, the fear and suffering it left in its wake, the ominousness of what it represented, as I imagined the storms of Earth's family will be facing in the years ahead. My son didn't know much about it. He had not seen photos or even read the news over those past few days. He looked up and said to me, "I can't look at that." I listened to his words and I let them sink in. I didn't cry at the time. I didn't cry writing this. I didn't even think that I would feel that. But I didn't say anything back except I get it. And then a few days later, we had a chance to come back to that moment and talk a little bit more about how and why we choose whether or not to pay attention to the crises that are happening in our world, and how to protect our hearts from being utterly overcome when we do pay attention. And I don't remember exactly what we each said to each other, but the conversation was short and sweet. A small acknowledgement of a big thing. What I wanted to tell him was about the podcast my friend in Western Massachusetts had sent me a few weeks earlier. I wanted to tell him about Joanna Macy, about her idea of the Great Turning, and how at 94 years old, she and Jessica Sarante, teacher and student, but also friends across a 60-year age difference, had decided to record themselves in conversation talking about this broken world and how they maintain hope and a sense of purpose in each of their respective life stages in the face of all of it. I wanted to tell him that I had binged that podcast in one day while I was doing house chores a few weeks earlier, and then I had gone and picked up Joanna's book, Active Hope, one that I hadn't yet read, in which she wrote with Chris Johnstone, and was in the process of that deeper dive in that book when he and I had this interaction. I wanted to tell him about Macy's 3 stories of our time. I wanted to tell my son all of it, but I didn't, because I was afraid he would think I was judging his choice not to look, or that I was pushing my own strategies for living in this world on him. I didn't want to risk sounding like I know what's best, like I know what it's like to be 24 years old right now, facing such an unknown future. I wanted to let him decide if and when he is ready to look up and look around and look for his part to play in this precious life he's living. And as I think about that, I guess I would say I feel the same for all of you. I don't want you to think that I know what it's like to be you right now either. I don't. But I really want to tell you about the 3 stories. So indulge me, please. Know that I am not trying to fix any of you. I am just working on me, my own sense of belonging to this place, this planet. And I am so grateful that you are here working on you, and you are doing this soul searching with me. I'm so grateful for your company. I'm so grateful to know I'm not alone. I'm so grateful that by building this place, this community together, we have a space that makes all of it a little easier, a little more hopeful and joyful. Joanna Macy says, people make sense of the state of the world by placing aspects of what's happening within a larger narrative. And she suggests that right now, there are 3 such narratives or stories working among us. The first of those stories she calls business as usual. According to Macy, business as usual is the story defined by industrialization, economic growth, and endless consumption. On the surface, this story offers us much comfort and convenience, at least many of us. It also brings us many things that we rely on to survive. It's the story of what's running the show. This is the story we hear most often from the news, from economists, from politicians, and so on. You have so much, and getting more means you're doing better. In this story, disasters are just interruptions that we can clean up before getting back to business as usual, back to the grind. The second story of our time, she says, is the great unraveling. This story is scary. This is the story of extinction, of crisis, of war, of floods. It's a story that suggests things are getting worse and worse. And when we hear this kind of story, it makes us feel overwhelmed and maybe hopeless. Early on in the COVID pandemic, when his college in New York closed their campus and he moved back home to finish the semester on Zoom, sitting on the couch in our living room, I remember my son having intense anxiety attacks. When I reflect on that, I wonder if it was then that he taught himself to avoid hearing the stories. I've done it too at times. I imagine all of us have chosen to look away from it all for short or long periods of time. I don't even think that's a bad thing. Many of us are doing it right now. In fact, so many that often when someone does bring up a story of the great unraveling, people are quick to let you know such open sharing is disturbing and unwelcome. You risk being labeled as depressing company. Maybe you're feeling that way about me right now. But there's a third story, says Joanna Macy, and that is the story of the great turning. And we catch this story from one another. The story of the great turning is a paradigm shift. It is a global movement that is building a more just and life-sustaining way of living together. It's about air to breathe and water to drink and safe food to eat and enough for everyone, energy that is clean and abundant, soil that gets richer year after year, ample space for wild nature, fair wages and good work for all who need it, and strong communities where everyone is welcome and free to express themselves, where we care for children, the poor, the sick, and the elders. Macy acknowledges that we still have a long way to go to address our planetary emergency, but she says if you look for them, you can see examples of impressive steps all across the world toward what is required for the great turning. In every county and all walks of life, people are turning up with the intention to play their part. They are turning away from behaviors and ways of doing things that cause harm. They're turning toward ways of doing things and thinking and being that supports the flourishing of life. Human consciousness, she says, may well be nearing a turning point. I don't know if it will be enough. I don't know if it will happen fast enough. But the story of the great turning is hopeful and joyful and creative, and I can see my place in it. Contextualizing my choices in that larger narrative helps me breathe and helps me function. And we're all invited to be a part of the great turning. In order to be a part of the great turning, we are called to see the world with new eyes. Macy offers 4 parts to that process, and they are familiar. Other teachers that I have studied have named these practices as well. You have heard me talk about these practices before. One part of seeing the world with new eyes is having a wider sense of self. We inter-are, Thich Nhat Hanh has said. A wider sense of self is developing our understanding that what affects me is what affects you. It is the interconnected web. When I recognize a wider sense of myself, I see that harm to the ocean is harm to me. I see that harm to people across the globe is harm to me. Valerie Kaur taught us in her book, See No Stranger, a wider sense of self is when we approach other beings with curiosity, saying, "You are a part of me I do not yet know." It allows us to practice revolutionary love and changes the world. And when we expand our sense of self to include ever-widening circles, we then begin to realize that any energy we give to the world is self-serving. We're allowed to be selfish, but selfish knowing that we are a part of all of this is a different kind of selfish. The second part of seeing with new eyes is reframing how we think about power. And boy, this community has done a lot of work on that over the last few years. In the story of business as usual, power is largely held by those at the top of hierarchies. A few have power over the many. And within that story of business as usual, there's also a strong sense of individualism. It dominates the culture. So when we're in that vision of power of a few, and we're thinking of ourselves as individuals, we get paralyzed. What can I do? I'm just one person. I can't make that corporation make a different choice. I don't have the capacity to change this issue. But there is another kind of power that is growing in the Great Turning. That is power with. And power with is the kind of power that comes from solidarity. It's the kind of power that grows out of that wider sense of self where I see that you are a part of me. Power with is transforming. In this community, we celebrate a power with model of shared ministry. Every new person who joins our community adds to our collective strength, adds wisdom, adds experience and insight, ideas, and energy. A power with model is how every civil right in the world has been won. A mighty web of people organizing for change. And you can see the same solidarity organizing today. The third part of seeing with new eyes is transforming the loneliness epidemic. And remember that individualism, it's connected. Imagine a wider sense of self and its impact on loneliness. We are well on our way in this work here at South Church. Community is so important, and that's what we're doing here. Real community changes loneliness into connectedness. And there are different kinds of community, and we're conscious about that. We have this, our South Church community. We have our wider community. We think of the global community. We think of the planetary community. And all of those communities are places we pour our energy. And every bit of energy that we pour into any version of community helps to change the world. And finally, the Great Turning asks us to have a larger view of time. For millennia, many Indigenous people have recognized the importance of this worldview. The Haudenosaunee are just one such people who have a concrete belief that we are connected to 7 generations before us, and we should always be thinking about 7 generations ahead of us, living in recognition that the decisions we make today should result in a sustainable world all the way then, 7 generations from now. This is not how business as usual operates, but embracing that larger view will transform so many destructive practices, and we can practice that work. This morning, Jen shared this Shambhala prophecy during that time for all ages. There comes a time when all life on earth is in danger. And it is just at this point, when the future of all beings hangs in the frailest of threads, that the kingdom of Shambhala emerges. We are finding our way home. Listen to your heartbeat. Be thoughtful about your choices. Be curious about your thoughts. Allow yourself to slow down, look up, look around. The Great Turning is not something any of us do alone. The Great Turning only happens through that magic human capacity to pool energy into communities and to practice active hope. Active hope, says Joanna Macy, is not wishful thinking. It is not waiting to be rescued by some savior. Active hope is waking up to the beauty of life on whose behalf we can act. We belong to this world. The web of life is calling us forth at this time. We've come a long way, and we are here to play our part. There are adventures in store, strengths to discover, comrades to link arms with, and endless occasions for love. We all have a role to play, a gift that we are here to give to one another, and none of us are doing it alone. Amen for that. I'm going to invite you to sing with me hymn number 1064 in your teal hymnal.
As we extinguish our chalice this morning, may we take its warmth and light with us. Let it glow from within that may cast out a light to the world before you as it all comes together.
So if you'd like to stand and put your hand on the shoulder of someone near you, please feel invited to do so. There is a Dene musician, scholar, and cultural historian named Lila June, and she has an excellent TED Talk online. I highly recommend it. I'll share it on our members page on Facebook this week. She says the Dene people have a word, Hozho. Hozho. I think it's Hozho. Hozho is the joy of being a part of the beauty of all creation. When we understand that humanity is an expression of the earth's beauty, we understand that we too belong. Lila June says Hozho understands that we have an ecological role. Hozho understands that our mother needs us. When we become her friend, her confidant, her ally, her partner in life, instead of her dominator, her superior, or her profiteer, we can transform dead systems to living ones. And this does not involve isolating national parks and never touching a blade of grass. No, it involves rolling up our sleeves, living within the processes of Mother Earth, becoming a part of the Earth's system as we were born to be, and using these minds that we have to protect and augment life on a holistic, regional scale, she says. If our ancestors around the world proved that this is possible, then it gives us hope. We can do it again. May it be so.